Hey friends, welcome back. I'm glad you're joining me again today. So if this is the first video that you've started watching this, please know that there are other videos in this series about the passive voice. The first two videos are about moving from active voice to passive voice, and the second one is about meaning of the passive voice. In this particular video, we're going to move on to use. How do we use the passive voice? In what situations? So first, let's talk about informal conversation because I find that very fun. So when we use passive voice in the informal conversation, it actually looks a little different. We use get. Okay, we use get and the past participle. So instead of using was or is or another form of be, we use get. So, for example, I got hit by another car on the way to work. Has that ever happened to you? It's happened to me. I was okay, but I was totally late for work. Yeah, so here's an example of, here's my pen, get with the passive voice. So let me just underline it so you can see it. So instead of seeing, I shouldn't cross that out, but just to show you, it's the same idea as was or is. This is not wrong. I'm just showing you that in another way we can say I was hit by another car. He got caught eating the cookies. Oh no, you know. So again, instead of using be, we use get. And because it's past tense, we see got. We got beaten by the other team. Do you know what this means? It means this. Oh, he's so sad. You know, they lost the game. So that's what that means. We got beaten by the other team. Or how about this? I got my hair cut. Not I cut my hair. And this is really funny when this happens in the classroom. If I, have my hair cut and I go in and my students say, oh, you cut your hair. I'm like, well, I didn't do it. Someone else did it for me. So what we say is, I got my hair cut. And if you want to know, if you want to look this up more on the internet, you can look up causative verbs. This is that structure. Got my hair cut. It's got plus verb or have plus verb. You can look that up later. So I got my hair cut. Someone else did it for me. I didn't do it. If I say I cut my hair, it's this. I'm doing it. But what I want to say is someone else did it for me. I got the car washed. So what does this mean? Does it mean I got out my sponge and I washed my car? No, it means that I took it to someone else to do, or maybe I went through the car washing machine. It's kind of funny when you say like that, car washing machine. All right, we can also use passive voice with situations with law. This happens a lot, and let me give you some examples. A law was written without the support of the public. So if you think back to our previous video, I mentioned writing policies. Another example that's just like that. We don't know who wrote the law. We don't know who really sat down and wrote these words on or typed on the laptop this law. But what's important is that it was written without support. Oh, he was found guilty of theft. So what does this mean? Well, when someone is arrested for a crime and there's they go into the courtroom and there's a jury. Let me write that above here so you have that word. Okay, a jury is a group of other citizens in the country and they make a decision about if the person is guilty or not guilty. So to be found guilty That's the way that we say that. We say it in the passive voice. And by a jury. That is who's doing the finding. So we could say he was found guilty by a jury of, there we go. Not this one. He was found guilty by a jury of theft. Okay. All right. No credible motive was established for the crime. So here we are not saying who established the motive. We're just saying no motive was established yet. But what's implied there, I mean, who establishes a motive? It's usually the police who are investigating. But we don't need to mention that because we kind of know. We don't need to mention that. It's like my example of rice in the previous video. Do we need to know who grows the rice? We know it's farmers, right? So we just don't mention that. We also see the passive voice with medicine. So for example, anxiety medication has been prescribed more and more in the last 10 years. Who's prescribing the medication? Doctors, right? So that by phrase is by doctors, but we just take it out. We don't really need it. It's not necessary. We understand that the people who prescribe drugs are doctors. All right, compared to this year, fewer women in Ohio were diagnosed with some stomach cancer last year. Do we know who diagnoses these women? Again, it's doctors, right? But we don't need that information. We know. Instead, we want to focus on the women, okay? So these are some examples of using passive voice with medicine. On to science. Data was collected from adults aged 50 to 75. Do we need to know who collected the data? A lot of times we don't. If you read many scientific papers and you go through that methods section and the findings, you'll see passive voice frequently when it's not important to know who the person is who did the action. Results were found to show no evidence of effects on cancer. Another example. Specimens were destroyed after use. Let's just take a minute to point out that all of these are in the simple past passive. And in a later video, we will talk about form of the passive voice. All right, we also use passive voice in academia. Results were discussed at several conferences. Do we know who discussed them? Well, probably the people who went to those conferences, right? But we don't need to say that. Studies have been conducted to address this question. Do we know who? Probably researchers. We don't have the specific names. If that information is important to us, then we can ask, right? We can ask the person who says, oh, studies have been conducted. Then a follow-up question like, oh, can you tell me, the names of some of those people who have done that research? Okay. Students have been found to respond positively to online learning. Another kind of, this is a sentence that we would see in the results section of a study. So if you're reading an academic paper, you would see a sentence like that. All right, quiz time. Which sentences use the passive voice? Ooh, a little different than last video. So here are some sentences. I want you to take a minute and think about what it looks like and what it means, and which sentences have the passive voice. All right, let's do it. So the first one, a literature review was performed. And the last one, not B or C. Let's look at B and C for a minute. So here's our verb. It's just simple past. Okay. The researchers found that's just simple past. Okay. And, oh, sorry, I missed our main verb here, indicate. Indicate, sorry about that. All right, and this one, definitely there is passive voice. Was conducted and was performed. Those are in the passive. Okay. Is there another one after this? No. All right, so that's it for this video. And the next one, we will look at form of the passive voice. I know you're super excited, and I can't wait to see you then.